Welcome to the Volunteer Youth Worker Podcast. Youth ministries rise and fall on the volunteers, so we are here to encourage and equip you. Join the conversation as we tackle the practical questions you are asking so you can help the next generation know Jesus.
All right, everybody, I've got Dr. Ken Castor here, and this is a great conversation. People know Ken, kind of what we're getting into with all this longer Q&A, but we had the beautiful, I think, just really fun opportunity to talk about student leadership, to ask you a number of questions at our YWC Conference in Moncton. And now that we're saying it, you should do a bit of an introduction to yourself and also tell people, had you ever been to Moncton before? Because we should do just a light East Coast back and forth on that for sure.
Yeah, I know. I'd never been to Moncton before. That was my first time in Moncton. Jeremy, was hanging out with you and being with some amazing people on the east side of Canada. And I had never been east of, I want to say, like the Canadian side of Niagara Falls. I think that was the furthest east I'd been in Canada. That's terrible.
There you go.
So I spent
that's all right. It's good.
Well over a decade in Canada and didn't get there. So anyway,
you saved it for the prime
awesome.
of your life to come, and experience the East Coast. It's
right.
a good time
when I have enough wisdom to really appreciate what I'm seeing and experiencing. So, but it was funny because, and this is a segue, but it was I landed at like midnight in Moncton at the airport. And we drove a few kilometers to the hotel, and then it was like half a block to the conference. And that's all I saw of Moncton for like 2 days. Was in the dark, just one road. And so I didn't know if there was anything else. So thankfully, my last day in Moncton, I got to see a little bit more. But yeah, awesome.
There is a few things. But yeah, we were grateful to have you. Why don't you introduce, so, this conversation about student leadership, we come to it because this has been something you've been studying for a long time. You're also writing a lot in it. We'll link a lot of things in the show notes. Sure. I mean, you've written and compiled and edited, the Make a Difference Bible for students, helping them take further steps. You've got the devotional. Just fill people in on how you've come to this material of student leadership and what you're doing in that space these days.
Yeah, man, I got really excited about youth ministry while I was in high school with Youth for Christ. And my high school was just a wonderful place for me to learn how to become a leader as a student. And then at 18 years old, I became a youth pastor in a local church, part-time.
No way.
And dude, I was terrible. I was a terrible youth pastor, but I always say in my innocence, I love the Lord, I love the Bible, and I love students. And so I put those three things together and just did the best I could. I had no idea what I was doing, but it was super fun. So that was when I was 18, and then I'm 53 now. So I've been involved in Next Gen ministry for 35 years, which is unbelievable to me. I remember when my youth pastor turned 35, and I thought, what am I doing with this old fogey? Like, what does he have to offer me? He's so old. And here I've been now in ministry for 35 years. That doesn't make any sense. So anyways, many of those years were in Canada, well over a decade of time in Canada, mostly on the West Coast and in Calgary. And, so I'm just delighted to be a part of this youth worker community and on your podcast, Jeremy. I have so much respect for you guys. So over the years, the Lord's been good and has opened up a lot of doors, a lot of networks. I was a youth ministry professor for 11 years in the States, and I'm doing that now on the side as I'm also equipping churches and writing and speaking about these things.
Yeah, in some ways we could do lots more on your bio because I know you, like your PhD, your thesis, you were into like research on stuff that impacts student leadership, and you did a research project with churches around this topic. You've got some work that you're doing now with some big denominations in the U.S. Like in terms of expertise on student leadership, you guys got to know Dr. Ken Castor is the guy. Like, this is such a wonderful thing we get to ask you this. And so, and I know I didn't need to say that out loud, not because, we need to pump you up. It's just that when we're wrestling in the trenches as volunteer youth workers, sometimes it's hard to know like, A, what are we supposed to be doing here for the sake of our students? And then has somebody thought this through? Like a lot of times in youth ministry, like you said, we find ourselves not necessarily just flying by the seat of our pants, but like we're going through motions of like, hey, we've seen this kind of thing, or we experienced a bit of this. And it's always wonderful when we come across somebody that says, hey, I've thought about this. I've actually done some research on it. And so I just appreciate that you would wade into that space on behalf of, us as the rest of the youth worker community, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy, and thanks for giving an older man a opportunity to say some things. So we'll see. See if it's helpful. I want to be helpful. Yeah.
Oh, it's going to be so helpful. Okay, so what happened is we got a chance to talk at our conference in Moncton about student leadership on our Saturday morning keynote session. Then we opened it up to Q&A. I said, anybody that has a question, text it in. We got so many questions. We couldn't get to them, obviously. And so I put you on the spot publicly to say, would you record this podcast? But for youth workers that weren't at the conference in Moncton, this is how we got to this. So we're just going to go through a number of thoughts from youth workers, questions from youth workers that were in the room in Moncton. And we love the ability to ask questions and to have these kinds of dialogue. And so some of the stuff will be just quick. Feel free, Ken, just to like push through really fast on some of them.
Rapid fire.
If you want to pause. Yeah. If you want to pause on any of them, you're certainly welcome to. But we've got lots. And so let me just dive in. And,
all right, let's go for it.
And we'll go for it. I like it. When the group grows and the pastor can't do this for everyone, how do you empower and encourage volunteer youth leaders to go beyond the event and do this type of discipleship with their key students? And obviously, we're talking in the lens of like student leadership, helping students go a little bit further in their faith. And so I'm guessing that this came from a pastor. Is wondering how to convince their own team to go a little bit further. And so what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I think this came out of some things that you and I were talking about on the stage about giving young people risky opportunities so that they can grow. And then not just relying on the weekly program of youth ministry to build discipleship in the next gen. So, but going outside the program. So the question is, how can we empower and encourage volunteer youth leaders to go beyond the events, to do some more discipleship for young people? Okay. So the words here are all E-words: empower, encourage, events. So let's see if I can do some E-words in response. Is that fair? So number one, I would say the E word would be example. So you should set the example yourself. So you should be doing discipleship ministry outside of your events. So set the tone in that way. So you should be showing up in the places where young people and families are, and you should be showing some sort of intentionality in terms of your investment with those young people in those times. So show up at their volleyball match, show up at their hockey game, or even practice and rally them on. Make sure you are an intentional presence in their everyday routines of life, that sort of thing. So set an example, but you can't do that for every single student that you're going to care about and be investing in. So you really do need to empower that group of volunteers. So set an example. The second thing I would say is then set expectations. That this is what, if you're going to volunteer in our ministry, this is what you're going to do. So it's not just about running an event. So I'm not looking for just program maintainers. I'm looking for disciple makers. So people who are interested in really investing in the faith development of young people in their everyday life. So set that expectation, like, hey, this is what we expect in our youth ministry is extra program discipleship. So in other words, you're going to be investing in the young people we're putting you with outside of program. So I'd love to explore that more. And maybe some of our other questions will get to that. So set an example, set expectations. And the third E would be set, I'm trying to think of the right E word. I want to say something about celebration or something. Set the excitement. So
I like that. You got example, there. That's good.
Set expectations and set the excitement. So in other words, really celebrate students' lives outside of the program. Don't make the program the quintessential moment of discipleship where you celebrate students' faith. No, like celebrate their faith and the way they're living for God outside of the program. So celebrate the fact, be excited about the fact that there are students in your youth ministry who are playing hockey and that they get to live for Jesus on their hockey team. Celebrate the fact that there's a kid who's been working really hard at a band concert and he gets to be a Christian in that setting, and you should be excited about that and celebrate that. So write cards, send notes, celebrate afterwards through text to the whole family, whatever it is, like find ways to be excited about students being involved in their everyday life as a follower of Jesus. Okay, so example, expectations, excitement.
That's so good. We used to do, we call it the fourth hour. And so we asked our volunteers for 4 hours a week, 3 hours were your volunteer on the program night. And then we'd just say, hey, there's a fourth hour. You put it wherever you want. Yeah. But let's go to a question, similar vein. These are great suggestions. This person texted in. I'm worried, how do I set realistic expectations if youth ministry is not my only responsibility? So now coming back to it being a point leader, and they're like, oh, I've got so many other things. And this is actually with volunteers as well. Hey, this is not the only thing I do with my life. Right. How do you find, or how do you model, like, I think even like the example of like go to a game, like, oh, that's a big commitment. That's even to say,
can be.
Okay, if I've got 12 kids in my small group, then I could go, if I go in once to their game in this semester, I would be out a whole nother night of the week, trying to driving around town, all that kind of stuff. And so how do you adjust those expectations based on somebody saying, my life's pretty busy, actually, that's a lot to do for 12 kids.
Yeah. Yeah, now, I'll push a little bit on this one, and people might be resistant to it, but I would say that a big part of youth ministry is living life with a visibility and an invitational posture for young people. So what I mean by that is this. If you go to the grocery store, invite a teenager to go with you. If you go you got to run a quick errand to Canadian Tire or something like that. I mean, so grab a couple students to go with you and just let them like see you in the action of your life, the activity of your life. So as you go, make disciples is really what Jesus says in the Great Commission. So do you ever like do anything during the week? Invite people to live life with you. So too many of us, I think, fall into a trap where we separate this idea of professional ministry, even if we're not getting paid for it. We separate like this professional youth ministry from our everyday routines. And what that teaches the next generation to do is to separate church and ministry from their everyday routines. And so you might hear a theme in the answers to my two questions. Like, I think true discipleship happens when young people are invited to see us living out our faith in our regular everyday lives. So do you have any time at all doing anything else during the week that you could invite some young people to? Do you eat lunch on Sunday? Do you have a meal during the week that you might be able to involve some teenagers in the meal and even the preparation of the meal, that sort of thing?
Well, yeah, keep going on that. So somebody else had asked, what kind of things have you tried to teach and show them to have the courage to try and learn some of the skill sets, sorry, a little bit clunky, that they'll need for the rest of their life? I think some youth workers, are curious, what are some of the ways that we can do discipleship? So you use the example of like a meal prep. And I heard, interestingly, because we've come out of this events, the Saturday morning keynote session in 2 weekends before Moncton, in Saskatoon, sorry, everything's blurring together, was with Chap Clark. And if you know Dr. Chap Clark.
Winnipeg. Yeah, Winnipeg.
In Winnipeg. Yeah. That's right. In Winnipeg. So he was talking about the power of this, as you go as you're going. And for some students, maybe they've not seen functional, meal prep or like eat around a table in a home or
really.
If you have family. And so are there some of those, and that's obviously not every youth volunteer listening. So there's lots of volunteers listening and they're like, I mean, I'm a 22-year-old and I'm living at home with my parents. But like even that, to see if you've got a good relationship with your parents to invite a student into is actually not a wrong thing. What are some other like interesting skill sets that we can show? Hey, this is how we live out faith in like these really hyper practical parts of our lives.
That's fantastic. What a great question to explore. I mean, so what are the things that you do on a normal basis during the week? I think you're probably driving places. So what if you had a student in the car or a couple students in the car with you and they saw how you acted in traffic? So, I mean, there's just little things that when you live life, your everyday routines of life with the next gen, they pick that up. And that's Deuteronomy 6. Like that is the idea that this is the model of discipleship that God has asked us to do for the next generation. So impress upon your children. So really impress upon someone who's younger than you this idea of how to live life when you get up, when you go to bed, when you are along the road, when you are going in and out of your house, when you're sitting at home. So every aspect of life, live it out. So I think while you're driving, while you're doing meal prep, it might actually make you a better person too. You might be more deliberate in the way you live your life instead of just running around last minute. Do you go to a movie? Do you, Jeremy, help me brainstorm here. Like what are some of the other regular everyday routines? You're going for a hike.
I think about the place where my faith is the most tested in New Brunswick. It would be Service New Brunswick, which is our provincial government. If you need to renew a vehicle registration or something like that.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. So, you're doing, I'm just thinking of those natural, like, oh yeah, this is, if you could see how I interact with somebody there, that's a wonderful test of the patience of the Lord on my life. And so what a cool thing, for a student to see that, because it is living out the fruit of the Spirit. It's living out, these calls from the New Testament to be the kinds of people that God has called us to be.
And then here's what's cool. I mean, it sounds like it's not intentional, but it really is, because what you're doing is you are creating spaces where those conversations about faith are going to happen, faith in real life and decisions about the future. And hey, this is why I'm doing this kind of work or chose this career. Or, hey, this is why I married my spouse. I mean, students are going to start to see those things. Hey, here's something in real life that I'm frustrated about. I mean, they're going to start to see that in you as you're inviting them into the process of your life. And so not everybody should be doing that or needs to do that necessarily. And you have to be safe about it. I mean, you can't just let anybody willy-nilly go and do that. So you've got to, I believe in vetting of volunteers, but giving volunteers, releasing them to be to develop apprenticeships in this sort of way. And Jeremy, I say this because one of my youth pastors changed my life when they invited me to go to the grocery store because they had to go get noodles and spaghetti sauce and hamburger and green peppers and onions so that they could make spaghetti for their family that night. And he's like, "Hey, Ken, what are you doing?" I'm like, "Nothing." And he's like, "Well, I got to go to the grocery store. How about I pick you up?" And he cleared it with my parents and everything. And I was like, "Okay." And I'm like 15 years old. And I thought that was the coolest thing, hanging out with Tim for an hour and a half while he goes to the grocery store. And we're just walking down the aisle looking at like, "Hey, which box of spaghetti, Ken, which box of spaghetti should I get?" And so I picked it out. And that's like a risky opportunity. And I'm like, man, I hope he likes it. Like part of me is like, I hope I didn't pick the wrong one because otherwise their meal's gonna. And then he's like, "Hey, you want to come for dinner tonight and eat it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And he goes, "Well, just make sure it's okay with your parents." So I called my parents and they're like, "Yeah, that's great." So I went to his house and I helped make the spaghetti dinner. I actually browned the meat and dude, it changed my life. And then we sat there with his little kids and his wife, Patty, and had dinner together. I couldn't believe that I had that opportunity. It was like the greatest thing that ever happened to me is what it felt like. And I've not forgotten a moment of it to this day. So, and what I saw was a family that loved each other. I saw Tim just living out his real faith and just being himself. So I saw that who he was on Sunday or at the youth group time, that's who he was at the grocery store. He wasn't a different person. And dude, that stuff starts to sink in, Jeremy. So yeah, I've gone way too long with this question probably, but I think it's actually
I think it's
key.
good because we honestly, I mean, for anybody listening, we haven't talked about these building on each other, but this next one will kind of lean right into this as well. I just want to share one quick thing because my youth leader, I had a youth pastor, youth leader of the volunteers. We had a bigger ministry when I was a student. And so he took this really well. And we loved it as like high school guys. We went over to his house. We helped him finish his basement. We helped him with yard work. And we were the cheapest labor out there because for the price of a pizza, he got like reasonably strapping we're ready to roll 12 guys and he got stuff done around the house, but we also benefited from the community and being together. So there's
I love that.
There's perks to it.
The same guy, he invited me to help him build his deck.
Yeah. Oh,
like,
yeah.
No
of course.
way, I get to build a deck. And I look back now, I'm like, yeah, it was cheap labor for him too.
It was very good. Yeah.
You could do two things at once. Yeah.
Two things at once. And God bless Dave Marshall. He's still around the church. We still laugh and I enjoy his life and the way he follows Jesus. Okay. Now, a young student leader myself, this is a person writing, how do I develop leader attributes in other students my age? Still being relatable, being someone they can feel encouraged to reach regardless of my stand and theirs. So my guess is from this that there's somebody who's like young leader, but also recognizing, I want my peers to care for Jesus in the same way. And so, maybe I'm not going grocery shopping because I'm still a younger student myself. How do I showcase my faith in a way that feels relational for even my friends to experience?
Oh, that's good. Okay, let me take some pressure off. I don't often answer questions directly, so I apologize for that. So dig in. I think an important background piece to that question is to remember that youth ministry is a long game. And so you're not meant to have the flashiest immediate impact every single week with every single student. That's too much pressure on yourself. Jesus didn't operate that way. He was in it for the long term. One of my favorite pastoral influences, Eugene Peterson, said, it's a long obedience in the same direction, right? So that's part of the impact that you're going to have. And so when Paul writes to Timothy and he says, hey, don't let others look down on you because you're young, but instead set an example. And there's like 5, the NIV has like 5 ways. I hope I can remember them right now, Jeremy. I might need your help, or I need to actually look it up. So in your speech, in your conduct, oh my goodness, your speech and your conduct, and I got to look it up too. Oh, that's so bad. In your love, in your faith, and in your purity. I knew I had it in there. So speech,
there you go.
Conduct, love, faith, and purity. Now you don't set an example on one Wednesday night with that stuff. So in your speech, in your conduct, in your love, in your faith, in your purity, that's not a one night thing, right? That's like a lot of nights. That's like a lot of days. That's like a lot of hours. That's letting the students see you, letting your other volunteer leaders see you. That's letting the church congregation see you over the long haul. So I have not answered the question at all, except to say, your impact, your influence on your other leaders is going to be a longer term impact than maybe what you want it to be. So
and I think
take a deep breath and aim for the long haul.
Oh yeah. And I think for you think about for this person, if they're thinking about their peers as a young leader, what a beautiful list: speech, conduct, love, faith, and purity as the marker for them to just filter through. Oh, am I living out? Can people experience and see my faith in my speech? And speech is the easy one. We won't go down back through the list again, but speech is the easy one because I think for students recognizing, and even us as adults, for me as an adult, it took me a while to realize one of the ways that my faith can be on display is by just talking about it naturally, that it's actually shouldn't be a weird thing for me to mention my trust in Jesus, or I'm making a decision, but I'm praying about it, trying to discern from the Lord, or like, hey, I was spending time with Jesus today. And like, just to bring that conversation into the real natural, like not weird or awkward. And for other people, if they've not heard that before, they can lean in and ask questions. But we should be able to talk openly about how we're expressing and experiencing our faith so that other people can recognize it in us in that kind of way.
And I like your positive spin on that too. So do they see you comfortable in talking about your own faith outside of the program? And also, do they see things in your speech pattern that would detract from the sort of faith development they'd want to see? So do they hear you gossip about other leaders, about other peers? And if you do, that's going to undercut your impact. So I love that 1 Timothy 4:12 sort of example there.
That's really great.
Yeah, and by the way, more pressure off of this person would be to think that they don't have to set an example at being the best at everything. So take that pressure off. Like one of the great things about the body of Christ is that you begin to recognize that other people are better than you. And you start to celebrate that because your confidence is in Christ. Your confidence isn't in yourself. So your confidence is in Christ. So you can actually find peers and celebrate that God is doing something great in them, has opportunities for them to serve Him. And so you can begin asking peers to set an example to you in the same thing. In the same way that they live. Asking others to be an encouragement to you is actually a gift to other people. So you don't have to always be the leader who's got it all figured out, who's better than everybody else, and you're paving the way for you don't always. That is a weird Western model of leadership that you just don't see in Jesus necessarily.
Two questions that are very similar. How would you handle a student that becomes too attached to you and tries to monopolize your time, taken away from other students? And then how do you establish healthy boundaries? Of course, plan to protect, but also just emotional boundaries with students when we're trying to get in proximity with them. So, I can think of the students that will be excited to spend time with you. It would probably be lots of them, but then also there's students that will then start asking for that maybe more often. And so from a practical standpoint, you take a student out to the grocery store and then they're next week saying, hey, can we go to the grocery store again? And you're thinking, I've got 6 other students I need to take to the grocery store and I don't go grocery shopping that often. What am I meant to do? How do I negotiate with this kind of, invitation?
I think the word no is a really important word in ministry. So being able to set boundaries. And so maybe you just have to practice the word no. I think having a team of other leaders is a really important thing in ministry. And I think people that you can entrust say, hey, Sally, I don't know, I'll pick a name. Sally is she's globbing on to me and it's not allowing me to do my other responsibilities. I can't disciple other kids or be with other kids because Sally's just always globbing on. Can you help? And so having other people play buffer and invest in Sally too and to share the load. But then I just kind of also want to remind everybody that teenagers are going through a lot of changes, and who they are in this moment is not necessarily who they're going to be in a year. And so you might have a year where you've got to put up with Sally globbing onto you. And guess what? The time will pass and it will be over. And during that time, you have a really unique opportunity to invest in her. So yes, I understand the feeling of urgency we have sometimes when students are monopolizing our time. But if we look at it a little bit differently, it can be a gift as well. So share the leadership, say no at the appropriate times, and redirect. But also just take a deep breath and in the long term of ministry, realize that eventually these students are going to graduate too. They're not going to be around forever. So don't think that like this is an eternal situation where you're constantly going to be accosted by this student.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting to note, like, I just think back to even just examples this fall of students, some of the students that I had in my ministry that were very, very interested in taking a lot of time, and they're still loosely around, or like, just they kind of popped up in this space. And I was like, I'm happy that I don't have regrets with how, some of those interactions went. And so to try to find a way as a leader, as you're setting those healthy boundaries, to say no to a student, say, hey, can we hang out this Friday? No. But you can say, hey, I'd love to, but not this week. And, but hey, do you want to make a plan for in a few weeks from now? And, some of those kinds of things are also showing them how to navigate, like it will feel like rejection, but I'm not going anywhere. I'm still right here. Like we're still having a conversation.
Yeah.
I'm not upset at you. And so there's a lot at play in those kinds of things. And so
if your youth ministry is established enough, you can also schedule times. So be proactive and take over the student's monopolization of you. So steer it to hey, once a month, I'm going to meet with every student in my small group before youth group starts. And so I'd like you to be the first one. And so, and just empower them with what it is that they're after. They also maybe don't have the maturing process done in terms of how to have proper social interaction with other adults. So you can see that as part of your discipleship process. Help them grow in how they're interacting with somebody that they feel like they need this time from you for some reason. So help them unpack that and help them become mature over the course of this school year.
Well, that's not the end of the questions that I got to ask Ken. However, it is the end of this week's conversation. So make sure you're subscribed, because next week we've got part 2 to this conversation where I get to talk with Ken about things like how do you call out leadership opportunities for the quieter students, or how do you get youth involved that hardly speak or come to your program faithfully but are struggling to connect. And so lots more to come next week. Make sure to check it out. We'll see you then.